So far, our program calculates the antipode latitude, which is minus 40.09. Let's now calculate the antipode longitude. So I'm just going to write it down here after the antipode latitude. So it's good to write the program in separate blocks, separate logical blocks. You don't have to. This is just for readability. So you as a programmer can read the program easier. So here we declare the objects, here we have the formulas, and here we are printing out the output. So how do we get the antipode longitude from the longitude? Well, let me bring up the map again. We saw that the longitude of Madrid was around -3 or so. And the longitude of its antipode, we know the antipode is New Zealand. It is 176. So there is a difference of 180 between these two longitudes. Therefore, we need to add 180 to the original longitude to get the antipode longitude. So the original longitude is stored in the identifier longitude, which is a float. So we need to add 180 to that float. If you see dir float, you'll see that you have an add method for float, which adds other numbers to that float value. So in this case, 180, well, that's more like in the decimal range, since this is degrees. Degrees can also have decimal points. So even though this particular value is 180, not decimal points, this is degree units. Therefore, it would be a better idea to use a float type. Then we have the value 180. You see this gray area here? That means we haven't closed all the parentheses. You see that this open parenthesis goes with this one. They are both blue, but this parenthesis needs to be closed here. So close it like that. Now everything is okay with the parenthesis. However, I forgot something here. When that happens, you'll get an error, such as this one in here. So longitude _ add is not defined. So Python thinks this is actually an identifier that I need to define. We'll talk about errors later. So because I forgot the dot here, Python thought this was a variable, an identifier. This time, if I run, I don't get an error. I get the result, which is the latitude. So we still haven't printed out the antipode longitude. We calculated it. We have the object in Python stored in this identifier, but we need to print it out. Execute. And now you get the actual value, which we expected. Now, things look good, but there is a problem here. You know, we were playing around with Madrid here in Spain, which has a negative longitude. But for some points, such as, let's go to somewhere in Japan. What's here? Here you see that the longitude is positive. So Madrid was a negative and Japan is positive. For positive longitudes, adding 180 doesn't work, because you would get something like 315, which doesn't exist. It's not a valid longitude value coordinate, because Japan would correspond somewhere in Chile, somewhere here. So which is around -70 or -60. So in case of positive longitudes, there is another formula. You need to subtract 120 so that the Japanese longitude of minus 100 something, if you subtract 180 from that, you'd get something like minus 80 or something, which would be the correct antipode. So we have two different formulas. But how does our program know which one to execute? So our program needs to make a decision here. How can a program make decisions? Well, I'll teach you that in the next video.